Story 1. I was in my second year of college when I finally moved out of the dorms and into an off-campus apartment. Rent was too high for me to cover alone, so I posted an ad online looking for a roommate. Within a week, I got a reply from a guy named Ethan. He seemed normal, quiet, polite, and said he kept to himself. That was exactly what I wanted, so I didn't think twice before letting him move in. The first couple of weeks were uneventful. We split the chores, paid bills on time, and barely spoke except for small talk in the kitchen. But after a while, I noticed something strange about him. I realized I had never once seen him sleep. At first, I brushed it off. Our schedules were different, maybe. I was just missing it. But I'd stay up late, working on assignments, and still hear him moving around in his room at 3 or 4 in the morning. The sound was always the same. Slow, steady footsteps, pacing from one side of his room to the other. Back and forth, back and forth. One night, curiosity got the better of me, and I peeked under his door. The light was on, and I could see his shadow gliding across the floor. He wasn't watching TV, wasn't listening to music, just pacing endlessly. The next morning, I asked casually if he'd slept well. He just smiled and said, "I don't really need much sleep." His tone was calm, but the way he looked at me made my stomach knot. After that, I started noticing other odd things. His bedroom door was always locked when he wasn't inside. He'd never invited anyone over, and he always kept this huge duffel bag near his bed, zipped tight. One night, around 2 a.m., I got up for some water. As I passed his door, I heard whispering. Not like a phone call, not even like he was talking to himself. It was faster, almost like chanting. I froze in the hallway, my hand on the wall, trying to make out the words. But as soon as I leaned closer, the whispering stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. The next morning, when I left for class, I noticed something else. Ethan hadn't left his room all night. Yet when I passed by, there was a bowl of food outside his door, empty, as if someone had slid it back. I never once saw him cooking. Weeks went by, and my unease grew. I started avoiding the apartment, spending more hours at the library just to get away. But eventually, I had to sleep in my own bed. That's when things escalated. One night, I woke to the sound of my door creaking open. My room was dark, but a thin strip of light from the hallway spilled in. I stayed perfectly still, pretending to be asleep. My heart pounded as I heard soft breathing. Someone was standing in the doorway, watching me. After what felt like forever, the door clicked shut again. I couldn't prove it was Ethan, but I didn't need to. I knew. The next day, I confronted him. I asked why he came into my room last night. His face didn't change, and he said, "I just wanted to make sure you were okay." That should have been comforting, but it wasn't. A few nights later, I woke again. This time, I heard the unmistakable sound of my closet door sliding open. I snapped upright, fumbling for the lamp. When the light came on, no one was there, but the closet door was wide open, and I swore I caught the sound of footsteps retreating down the hall. I started locking my bedroom door after that. It didn't matter. One morning, I woke to find my lock broken, as if someone had forced it open from the outside. Nothing was missing, but I noticed something terrifying. The sheets on my bed were tucked differently, like someone had stood over me and smoothed them down. That was the day I decided to snoop in his room. I waited until he left for class and picked the lock with a hairpin. The smell hit me first, something sour and metallic, like dried blood. Inside, the walls were covered in pages torn from medical textbooks, all about anatomy and human sleep cycles. On his desk were notebooks filled with obsessive scribbles about studying sleep and perfect stillness. But what froze me was the duffel bag. I unzipped it and found a collection of old, worn clothes. Naughty Sisa, even the same gender. Some of them had stains on them I didn't want to identify. I zipped it shut, locked the door, and tried to act normal until I could figure out what to do. That night, I pretended to sleep, my phone in my hand, ready to call 911. At around 3 a.m., my door opened again. I stayed still, but my finger hovered over the screen. I felt his presence near my bed, the weight of his eyes on me in the dark. Then, softly, he whispered, "You sleep so peacefully." I wish I could. I couldn't take it anymore. I bolted upright, shouted at him to get out, and dialed the police. When they arrived, Ethan was gone. His room was empty. His things vanished, as if he'd never lived there at all. The police told me the name he gave me didn't match any records at the college. His phone number was disconnected. It was like he never existed. But sometimes, even now, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and swear I hear pacing footsteps outside my bedroom door. Story. Dos. When I first moved to the city, I didn't know anyone. Rent was outrageous, so finding a roommate felt like the only option. I posted on a housing board, and within days, a woman named Lena messaged me. She looked normal in her profile photo, smiling, friendly, professional. She worked in marketing, said she was clean and respectful, and even offered to cover a bigger share of rent since she had a good job. It felt too good to be true. At first, she was everything you'd want in a roommate. She kept the place spotless, never complained, and even cooked meals for the both of us sometimes. But after a few weeks, I started noticing how much she knew about me. She'd casually bring up things I hadn't told her, like my favorite snacks, the shows I watched, even little details about my family. When I asked how she knew, she just laughed and said, "You must have mentioned it." I hadn't. At night, I'd sometimes wake up to the faint sound of footsteps in the hall. Once or twice, I thought I heard my bedroom door click, but when I sat up, it was shut. I brushed it off, telling myself I was paranoid. One weekend, I left my laptop open in the living room while I ran errands. When I got back, it had been moved. The screen was smudged with fingerprints, and one of my private documents, my resume draft, was open. When I confronted Lena, she acted hurt. "Why would I go through your stuff? I respect your privacy," she said, her voice calm and steady. I wanted to believe her, so I did. But the unease grew. I started noticing little things in my room out of place. Clothes folded differently, my notebooks stacked neatly, my phone charger coiled in a way I never left it. It was like someone had been in my room, tidying up. One night, I decided to stay up late, pretending to sleep. Around 2 a.m. I heard it, the unmistakable creak of my bedroom door opening. My heart raced as I lay still, eyes barely cracked open. A shadow moved across the room. It was Lena. She walked slowly to my desk, opened a drawer, and started going through my things with eerie precision. She wasn't rummaging, she was studying them. I forced myself to stay still, watching her place everything back exactly as it was. After a few minutes, she turned toward my bed. I shut my eyes quickly, holding my breath. She stood over me, watching, for what felt like forever. Then she whispered, "You really are perfect." I wanted to scream, but I couldn't move. Eventually, she left, closing the door softly behind her. The next day, I tried to act normal, but inside, panic consumed me. I decided to test her. I left a note inside my journal that said, "If you're reading this, you shouldn't be in here." When I came home that night, the note was gone. I knew. Then I wasn't safe. I started sleeping with a chair wedged against the door. It didn't stop her. One night, I woke to the sound of metal scraping. She was trying to pick the lock. I shouted her name, and the noise stopped instantly. She didn't respond, didn't apologize. She just went back to her room. The next morning, she cooked breakfast like nothing had happened. "Pancakes today," she said with a smile, sliding a plate toward me. My stomach turned at the thought of eating it. I made plans to move out, fast. I didn't tell her I didn't trust her reaction, but she must have known. On my last night there, I woke again around 3 a.m. My door was wide open this time. Lena stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the hallway light, holding something small in her hand. It was my toothbrush. She stared at me for a long moment, then said softly, "You shouldn't leave. We're so good together." I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone, threatened to call the police, and she finally backed away. The next morning, I left without waiting for her to wake up. I never went back for the rest of my things. A few weeks later, I checked the housing board where I'd met her. Her profile was gone, no trace of her anywhere. But sometimes, I still get emails from random accounts messages that say things like, I know what you had for dinner, or you still keep your charger by the bed, right? I've changed numbers, moved cities, even switched jobs, but somehow she still knows. Story 3. When my old roommate moved out suddenly, I didn't have much time to find someone new. Rent was crushing me, so I posted an ad and crossed my fingers. A man named Caleb replied the very next day. He seemed normal enough, quiet, polite, even a little shy. He said he worked nights at a warehouse, which explained his odd hours. I figured that was perfect. If he was gone at night, I'd have the place to myself. At first, everything went smoothly. He paid rent on time, didn't leave messes, and mostly kept to himself. But after a few weeks, I started noticing strange things. Sometimes, when I came home from class, I'd find small items in my room out of place. My hairbrush on the opposite side of the dresser. A mug I hadn't touched sitting by the bed. I told myself maybe I was just tired, forgetful. But deep down, ikineo primera vez en. Imagining it, one night, I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of someone breathing in my room. Not soft or distant, loud, slow. Steady, like they were standing right next to me. I fumbled for my lamp, and as the light clicked on, the sound stopped. My room was empty. The door, however, was cracked open. I convinced myself it was a dream, but I started locking my door at night. Still, the strange occurrences continued. One morning, I woke to find my door wide open, even though I knew I'd locked it. My window was cracked too, letting in the cold night air. That evening, I asked Caleb if he'd noticed anything odd. He smiled slightly and said, "Maybe you just forgot to lock it. You do look like a deep sleeper." The way he said it made me feel sick. I decided to test him. Before bed, I placed a small piece of tape over the door frame, just enough to break if the door opened. When he woke up, the tape was gone. My door was locked, but something was off. My phone, which I always kept charging by the bed, was sitting on my desk across the room. I confronted Caleb more directly that morning. He didn't deny anything, he just looked at me calmly and said, "You shouldn't leave your things lying around. Someone could take advantage." The next few nights, I barely slept. I pushed a chair under the doorknob and kept a kitchen knife under my pillow. But then something happened that made me realize how much danger I was truly in. I came home early one afternoon and found Caleb in my room. He was sitting on my bed, facing the closet, as if waiting for something. When he saw me, he didn't flinch. He just said, "Oh, I was checking for leaks. I thought I had dripping." There was no leak. My closet was bone dry. After that, I started making plans to move out. I didn't tell him I couldn't risk it, but he must have sensed it. On my second to last night there, I woke up to find him sitting in the corner of my room, not moving, not speaking, just sitting in the dark, watching me. I froze. My throat tightened, my heart racing so loud I was sure he could hear it. Finally, I whispered, "Get out." He smiled faintly, stood up, and walked out without a word. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I packed everything I could fit into my car. I didn't care about the rest. I just needed to get out. When I opened my door to leave, I found something taped to the outside. It was a Polaroid photo of me, sleeping in my bed. My blood ran cold. The date scrawled on the bottom was from the first week he'd moved in. I never saw Caleb again after that. He never answered my calls or texts when I demanded an explanation. The landlord told me later that he vanished without a trace, leaving nothing behind. But sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I swear I can feel the weight of someone sitting in the corner, watching me breathe.